Good morning, everybody. You can see that I've made some changes to the high school graduate. When I was working in here and I was working on getting the hair finished, and what I did was, and this is one thing that you kind of got to do with uh, portraits, is you get to the point where you're looking at it from a foot and a half away, and you don't see stuff. So what I started doing with this one is I'd lean it up against the wall, and then I'd take like 2 or 3 steps back from the table. So I was basically about 8 feet away from the image, and I started looking at it. And what I'd do is I'd set the photo, like this. Here, hold on, let me show you. This. I was putting these kind of side by side and using a comparison to see where they differed. And it occurred to me that this necklace, okay, was a white, and it was a white compared to her chest and neck. So what I realized I had to do is, remember I had I had the shadow here and I had some darkness here. What it is, I realized that this was a stronger white than the rest of her chest and neck. So I covered it with tone, with a very sheen of light darks dots, and then you can see where I've added more dots in here to give her some definition in her neck. And what it's done, when I got to do some more, I got to do blending now to blend this into this. But what it's done now is it's now pushed this back and really made the face the focus. To push it even more, I would want to take this tone or this tone and put it in the background. If Miss Linda shows up today, I'm going to talk to her about that. Other than that, though, all I really need to do now is I need to finish the mouth and the lips and the eyes. Once I have that done, I believe the whole thing is going to pull together, because even though this this necklace is still whiter than any of the highlights on her face, this is where you need to take the artistic license, and you need to leave these highlights as they are to draw you into the face. So like only really like here at this nostril here would I add a very thin sheen of dots and just darken around the rest of that underside of the nose a little bit to pull it all together. That along with here and here, which I'm not going to touch those areas until these eyes are done. So, but that's really all I've got left um, to do on this face. So now the next one I'm working on is this one here. Okay. Now with this one here, you can see that you have the same line weight where I drew it up and then the tracing, and then I just traced it. What I've done is, after I've traced it, I'm going back in, I'm erasing lines, and I'm adding some push and pull now to the pencils, so that way it's got more. See, there's not a lot of detail here, but there's more detail around the eyes. That's why I'm doing that, so I can really tighten up the pencils for uh, when I go in. But again, you still take a look where I'm still doing a little bit of shading here to help me out. Overall, I'm still just leaving the line work, and then what I'll do is I'll use the photograph as reference, the black and white photograph as reference for the tones. So, and I don't consider that to be any type of cheating. The reason why is because you're going to have, in the end, because of the dots, you're going to have the feel of the image of being black and white. It's not going to look like a reproduction of the photograph. So, so I'm just going in here right now, and I'm working on the hat, the seams of the hat. You know, the woven of the hat. So it's a beanie. So just put those thick weaves in, and this area here is going to be darker. So That way it'll blend in. So, but I just want to get this. I did this part intentionally last night, so that way I could work on this while I was talking to you guys. Um, while I was working on this well, first and foremost, I left here, went home, and I was tired. So after we had dinner, Miss Stipp, she started to watch Gremlins, the movie. And I lied down on the ground, on the floor with a pillow, and halfway through promptly fell asleep. And when I woke up, it was three-quarters of the way through the Gremlins 2. So it was late, but I was like, I still wanted to get done, work on this, or not necessarily. I want to get work on the pencils of this, but I tried to work on the image of the high school graduate with the dots at home. Didn't work out. It was an utter failure. Um, but so I went upstairs, started work, and while I was working on this, I first watched Batman '66 the movie, which I watched it and I was done watching. I'm like, yeah, this validated reason why I thought it was a joke when I was a kid, before even I knew about before the Batman movie, Michael Keaton even came out. I was like, this is no, this. I've never been a fan of the campy Batman. I understand how there's a cultural pull on it, but no, I just not my cup of tea. So, um, but then afterwards, I was just scrolling through the free streaming programs, because like all of like the paid stuff, it's on the TV downstairs. I intentionally don't load that stuff onto my TV upstairs, even though it's a smart TV, and I just have like the freebies, like Freevee and Tubi, and so and the it's a Samsung TV, so you got the Samsung built-in app. Um, so I was going through and I found by accident. Do you guys remember the Aquaman 2006 TV plot with Justin Hartley? Yeah, it's available on Tubi. So I was like, ooh, I remember hearing about this. Let's see. And I turned it on, and I got to tell you, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I was like, this is really good. But my very first thought afterwards was, I can understand why it wasn't picked up. Okay. Um, it was originally I think it was like made in 2005. It was intended to be part of the 2006 fall lineup, and then of course we had the merger of UPN and WB and CW to make the CW. CW didn't pick it up. Honestly, I can understand that. Okay, I'll get into that later, but it was done by the same creators of Smallville, and I suspected that while I was watching it before I did any research, just from the tone, and it was kind of being done in that team drama storytelling method that Smallville was so successful with, and again, it just had that feel to it. So I was like, yeah, I can understand that why it would have that feel if it was done by the same team. But in some ways, I'm kind of glad that it wasn't picked up. The reason why is because if you remember in the Smallville, they really avoided costumes on the characters. Other than even when they did Green Arrow, they created their own costume for Green Arrow, which really wasn't a costume per se. Okay, it was the closest they came to having a costume. It wasn't really close, and just from how they were doing the same thing. Remember how Clark in Smallville always had a red jean jacket, always had blue T-shirt. Same thing went with Justin Hartley's as Aquaman. He was always wearing an orange tank top and green swim trunks. And they did as much as possible to have him outside of his costume, or I say outside of his costume, in the water without a shirt. They loved having him without a shirt. So, which again, uh, doing the teen drama, a lot of girls were watching Smallville because of Tom Welling, and so that made it a hit. So I can see why they were going to like keep his shirt off. The girls are going to love this. Um, so, but again, so like, because they were doing that, because again, I'm like, we never would have had the Arrowverse if this show had been picked up and we then had a Smallverse instead of an Arrowverse. So, but so I just really looked at it and was like, I understand. I'm kind of glad that they didn't pick it up. I also, the reason why I'm glad they didn't pick it up is I got a lot of. Do you remember? Some of you may remember the original Flipper TV show, but if not the original Flipper TV show, you may have remembered in the '90s they had a Flipper remake, and I just got that sense from the feel of the show that it was going to be a Flipper remake with Aquaman as Flipper. Okay, if they could train Flipper to do as many scenes as Aquaman as Arthur, but it had a lot of the same feel to it. It was shot in Miami, which remember back then Miami was becoming a bit of a hotbed. It had just completed the the CSI Miami show, and Burn Notice was shot in Miami, and it was becoming a hot hit. So I can see where uh, Miami would have been like, oh, we're getting a superhero Aquaman. We're getting, well, maybe not superhero, but they're like, we're getting another TV show. It's kind of a teen drama. Okay, we'll make sure you get some tax breaks. But again, I was kind of like, again, I'm kind of glad they didn't. But I still did like it. It had things that I liked about it, and like the again, right off the bat with the plot or the pilot, it wasn't a full like 2 hour movie pilot. It was a 42-minute TV show pilot. Introduced all the characters and gave you a setup for what the show was going to be about. Okay, Lou Diamond Phillips, and it's smart that they picked Lou Diamond Phillips because he was just starting to show his age with the crow's feet at his eyes, which I kind of liked. So the first thing I thought was, okay, good. You're going with someone who's a veteran actor and would do a good job the way Rob Schneider did a good job as Clark's father. You have him playing Aquaman's stepfather. Thing I didn't like is throughout the episode pilot, they kept making referencing, or Arthur kept making referencing to my father, my father, my father, and his stepfather, instead of being a lighthouse keeper, he was a Coast Guard member of the Coast Guard, high-ranking member of the Coast Guard. So you right off the bat, you're like, oh man, we're going to have the rebellious son against his stepfather, and looking at his father as an authoritarian figure, and them coming at odds. And throughout it, another character comes in and like, oh, I knew your father, and that was Ving Rhames. And he again, they gave him a different name other than Volko, but you could tell right off the bat that this was the Volko character. And at the end of it, again, you have where he's like, he makes it established that I'm now going to be your teacher. You've got a lot to learn about your powers and whatnot. Which again, you're going to have conflict because of you have your you have your stepfather, you have the teacher father figure, and now you're going to, and then on top of that, he wants to find his biological father. Me, I kind of was one of those where it's like, I mean, I could see right there, and that's the one thing where Smallville was smart, was they'd already well established where Clark was like, I may have a Kryptonian father, but you, Rob Schneider, are my dad. So again, I just looked at them and was like, yeah, I'm glad this wasn't made into a show because honestly, if it had become a hit, it would have completely disrupted the Aquaman lore, where they in Smallville they held very close to the Superman lore of who Clark Kent's journey was to become Superman. Whereas you really didn't have, where it's because you didn't have as much information on Arthur's uh, past and his, or we don't have a lot of documentation of him as a child where we do with Clark Kent. They'd give him a lot more liberties, which means they'd be able to deviate farther and farther from the Aquaman lore, which would have been infuriating to comic book fans. But if it was a hit, it would just, like I said, it would have muddied the water and it would have justified all the bullshit we have to deal with now with the MCU, where they have reached the point where they're really starting to bastardize the origins of the characters and really deviating from source material. Because here's the big thing: we remember how uh, when they had Smallville and how they made Oliver more of a Bruce Wayne techie guy with his costume and everything. And what did Marvel Comics do? Right off the bat, they changed Green Arrow from the longbow hunter back to the uh, arrows with gadgets and whatnot. So I was, like I said, I was kind of glad because then once Arrow picked up and Arrow became a hit, they kind of diverted back to not necessarily the longbow hunter but they made him more involved with like the League of Shadows and such, because that's what Arrow was, and Arrow was a hit. So again, I'm glad because that means when they finally did the Aquaman movie, the first movie, they stuck very, very close to the source material. So I'm very happy about that. So yeah, I'm intentionally going kind of dark here because I don't want to have to go over here with wave after wave after wave of dots. So I don't want this to be a jet straight black. I want there to be some more gray tone in it. Now, when I get down to this area down here, we are going to get into some darks, some heavy darks, which I want. I want heavy darks down here because when you're doing an image, okay, if you have your darks up here and lights down here, your image visually is unstable. You always want your darks to be at your bottom to form your base. Perfect example is when you look at back when they did architectural drawings. Okay, when you did an architectural drawing, they would intentionally, you would have your line, even though the line at the top of the building and the line at the bottom of the building, they would intentionally, as you come down the building, they would thicken the line so that the line, even though it was maybe a straight on shot, the lines at the bottom, the lines at the bottom would be thicker than the lines at the top because you wanted that building to look stable. If you took that drawing and then flipped it upside down, or let's say you did in reverse, your thick lines were at the top, your thin lines were at the bottom. The building, and as an actual architectural drawing, would now look unstable, and that would, because remember, with architectural drawings, a lot of times were used for investors along with construction. You you had to be able to say how stable the building was by having your thick lines at the bottom. So, and all of these uh, things that came from the Baja House of Design in Germany prior to uh, World War II. The Bauhaus House of Design is pretty much what created established the theories and rules of Western design that are still utilized today in advertising, in both line work and in color schemes. Uh, how we use uh, how you might have a green background with someone with red because it's a contrasting color. That was established by the Bauhaus House of Design. So, but no, I did enjoy the Aquaman show. Again, you could tell where the Ving Rhames was supposed to be playing the Volko character, and then of course they established in the pilot that there was a secret government organization investigating to find Atlantis. And they didn't know it was Atlantis per se. It was uh, they were people were starting to show up who had gone through the Bermuda Triangle during the 40s, and they're coming back, and they had to age today. So they were looking for they were trying to break the secrets of the Bermuda Triangle, and they didn't know that Arthur Curry was Aquaman, but they knew of an individual who could lead them there. So it would have been him fighting, learning his powers from Ving Rhames, conflicting with his father, Lou Diamond Phillips, and then you had the hot jet pilot who he rescued in the TV show in the pilot. She was being recruited by the secret U.S. government organization. So he would have been almost constantly hiding and creating a misdirection for her and the organization. So I, like I said, I liked it. I was like, wow, this would have been a good show. But I can see why it wasn't picked up, and B, I'm glad it wasn't picked up. We wouldn't have gotten such a good Arrowverse if that was the case. And I did like the Arrowverse. I think the biggest thing that held up the Arrowverse was when they first started, the first three seasons of Arrow, they were trying to establish it as being completely separate from DC Comics. And then when they brought in the Flash, they had to then spend they then had to correct the first 3 seasons of the show. So that's again where it's like that was one of the, see the Arrowverse was one of those instances where they paid attention and realized, hey, there's money to be made by sticking to DC lore. And once they started sticking more to DC lore, all the shows became more popular. And then towards the end, they really deviated again from DC Comics lore, and that's when all the shows pretty much went to shit too. So it's a good lesson for whether it be a DC movie, which we're discovering that the test screening of Superman, James Gunn's Superman, is going very poorly, which I'm not surprised. Along with where Marvel needs to truly course correct to get themselves back on track, where Marvel movies are literally printing money, and that comes down to you got to respect the source material. So, but and the Aquaman TV show, it wouldn't have respected the source material. They would have they I think they intentionally picked Aquaman because of the fact that there was such little source material that they gave them more free liberties. So, guys, tell me what you guys think. Go watch it on Tubi and then let me know in the comments. Give me a like, give me a subscribe. But remember, everybody, uh, whatever you're doing in life, remember life is stressful. That's the reason why I always say, please take it all one dot at a time.